All right, moving right along, we're on to exercise 9-7. This is standard product cost, direct materials variance. So now we're actually going to look at standard cost and total cost. H.J. Heinz Company uses standards to control its materials costs. Assume that a batch of ketchup is 7,650 pounds of ketchup. That's a lot of ketchup. Has the following standards. So here you can see again, we're given the different ingredients. We're given the standard quantity for a batch and the standard price that we expect to pay per batch. So remember, there's things like what happens if there is a glut of tomatoes on the market? Well, then that price is probably going to go lower. What happens if there's a blight on tomatoes and we're short? Then that cost will go up. Then down here, they show us the actual materials in a batch may vary from the standard due to tomato characteristics, as I just said. Assume the actual quantity materials for batch 8-99 were as follows. So instead of 5,000 pounds, we used 4,900, and then you'll see what we have there. So the first thing they want us to do is determine the standard unit materials cost per pound for a standard batch. We're going to round the per unit answer to the nearest whole cent. So we're going to move over here to, not the board, I guess, but I guess to the board. So we're going to do our standard cost per batch first. And this is similar to one of the exercises we did earlier. We're going to start with our whole tomatoes, which I want to spell right. So whole tomatoes, so remember that that is 5,000 pounds times the standard cost of 75 cents per pound. So that total comes to 3,750. So that's for our tomatoes. We then are going to do vinegar. That's the second ingredient. And on a standard batch, we have 350 gallons at 90 cents per gallon. So that's going to give us a total of $315 for a batch standard. Then we've got corn syrup. And for corn syrup, we use 40 gallons times $7.50 per gallon. So that cost is going to be $300 per batch. And then finally, we've got salt. And we use 125 pounds of salt times $1.80 per pound for a total of $225 in salt. Then we add that up, and for the whole batch, it comes to $4,590. And then they want us to calculate out the standard materials cost per pound. So to get the cost per pound, we are going to take the $4,590 and we're going to divide it by our 7,650 pounds in a batch, and that's going to give us a total of 60 cents per pound. Remember that this is the standard cost that we've done so far. Okay, so in the next part of the problem, so this is A. And then in B, it says determine the direct materials quantity variance for batch 899. If required, round amounts to the nearest cent as a positive number. All right, so that means what we have to calculate out right now is we have to calculate out the cost, the actual cost for the batch. And so remember, they gave us that information as well earlier. And so we're going to calculate it out. We're going to calculate using the actual quantity times the standard price because we're doing a direct materials variance here. So we're going to look again, and the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to do the actual cost. So again, we're gonna look at our whole tomatoes. And on the whole tomatoes, we actually used 4,900 pounds instead of 5,000 for a total of at 75 cents per pound. So that total amount comes to, can you pause? Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had jumped a spot, so I didn't have my totals here. So the total whole tomatoes, 4,900 times 75 cents. Actual cost was $36.75. Then we're going to look at our vinegar. And the actual amount that we used was 375 gallons times the 90 cents per gallon, and that came to $3.15. No, it didn't. It came to $337.50. Sorry, I've got tons of notes on my page, as usual. All right, then we've got our corn syrup. And the actual amount that we used was 36 gallons times that $7.50 per gallon. That amount came to $2.70. And then finally, we have our salt. And the actual amount of salt we used was 140 pounds times the price of $1.80 per pound for a total of $252. Okay, and so if we take that total, the actual cost comes to $4,534.50. $4,534.50. So again, then what they want us to calculate out is the direct materials quantity variance per batch. Okay, so what you'll notice when we're looking for the direct materials quantity variance, our focus here is on the amount of the material that we used rather than the price. So we use the standard price to calculate out these variances. And so if you're looking at this, what we've got is I've got our actual quantity. How do I want to do that? I'm going to do our actual quantity per batch times the standard quantity per batch. So we're going to have actual quantity per batch minus our standard quantity, and that's going to give us our quantity difference. And then we're going to multiply that times the standard price. So that's SP, and that's going to give us our materials quantity variance. Okay, and when we're doing this, we're going to look at the amounts for each item. So I'm going to do these as 1, 2, 3, 4. So tomatoes will be 1. So for example, the actual quantity of tomatoes that we used was 4,900 pounds. And the standard quantity is 5,000 pounds. Okay, so this gives us a difference of 100 pounds. So, and we used less pounds than the standard. So then we're going to multiply that times the price per pound of 75 cents per pound. And that's going to give us a materials quantity variance of $75. It's negative, which means we spent less, which means it's favorable. So again, when you're looking here, you're going to always calculate out whether a variance is favorable or unfavorable. When we're using less than the standard, that's a quantity variance, that's going to give us a favorable variance. So you take your actual minus your standard. So that gives us a $75 favorable variance for the tomatoes. We're going to do the same thing for the vinegar. Remember that the actual quantity was 375 gallons. We're going to subtract that from the 350 gallons, which is the standard quantity. This time we used more, so we end up with a positive number. We're going to multiply that by the standard cost per gallon, and that's going to give us a variance of $22.50. That's unfavorable. Okay, and if you look here, you could do it this way also. You could take the $337.50 and subtract from that the $315 under standard, and that's going to give you that $22.50 unfavorable variance. Now we're going to do the same thing for the corn syrup. Under the corn syrup, the actual amount we used was 36 gallons, and the standard is the 40 gallons. So here, right, we used less, so we're going to see that in parentheses, and that's going to be a favorable for us. So we're going to multiply that times $7.50. That's going to give us a favorable balance of $30. Remember, we're spending less because we're using less, so it's favorable. And then the last item we're going to look at is the salt. And with the salt, we used 140 pounds. And the standard is 125 pounds. So we used a lot more than expected. That's going to give us a 15-pound variance. We're going to multiply that times the $1.80 standard cost per pound. And that's going to give us an unfavorable variance for the salt, of $27. So you would want to look into each of these items if these were material variances, and that amount's going to be set by the accounting department to look at. Maybe you want to see, why do we have to use, how can we use less tomatoes? Did we get a better crop in? Why did we have to use more vinegar? Was something spilled? Was there a problem with the batch? Again, with the corn syrup, you would look at all of these items. And then if you want to get the total materials quantity variance, you're going to take the difference here. So our favorable variances are $105, and we're going to offset those with the two unfavorable variances. And so we're going to get a total materials quantity variance of $55.50 favorable. And that's made up of the four different items. So let me make sure we answered everything. I'm going to miss an item on here. And we are good to go.